Howdy, it's Uncle Paul, and I'm going to read chapters 6 and 7 of my little book, Bears Don't Eat Fat People, that I self-published in 2003, and that will complete the book. So beginning with chapter 6, it's called The Invitation, and this is the drawing my father did. Okay. All right. My best friend and former college roommate, Dustin, called one evening with the news he was getting married and wanted me to be in the wedding. Influenced by his excitement, I accepted the invitation with great enthusiasm. Seconds after hanging up, I knew I made a dreadful mistake. My newfound confidence was dominating my mind, and I didn't consider the challenges the wedding would bring. The wedding was going to be in Albany, New York, in a month. One of the things fat people despise most is traveling, especially long distances to unfamiliar places. We have a zone of comfort that we are loath to leave, and Albany was over 2,000 miles beyond mine. Then there was the matter of a tuxedo. Years earlier, I had worn a tuxedo for my brother's wedding, and the experience was horrendous, humiliating, and I'm sure humorous to everyone but me. Since then, I had put on at least half a person. Finding clothes to fit was always a major problem. When I say fit, I simply mean clothes that would cover me without falling off as long as I stood still. No clothes ever truly fit. You can't walk, sit, squat, twist, turn, or step without having to readjust everything, including your underwear. I'd always been curious what would happen to my clothes if I jumped, because the circumstance for such a duty had never arisen. Every wedding in history has suffered a tuxedo crisis. The usual solution when something doesn't fit is to run to the tuxedo store and get a replacement. Well, it isn't quite that simple for Fatso. I was so huge, even a whole chain of nationwide stores dedicated to men who are big and tall didn't carry my size. So the chances of a tuxedo store in Albany being able to fit a fat guy in Wyoming were slim. With great reluctance and some regret, I bowed out of Dustin's wedding, but promised I would be there for the momentous event. Now I was committed to the long, arduous, laden with shame journey. The method of travel was predetermined. Flying was out for the following main reasons. Number one, airports were too crowded with unpleasant people. Unpleasant because they didn't want to be there and didn't want anyone else to be there either. Number two, the seats were too small. In order to be comfortable and not risk my life by crowding the space of any already unpleasant person, I would have to buy 2 seats. Buying 2 seats increases the humiliation factor to an unacceptable level, not to mention the greater expense. Number 3, I probably couldn't fit in the restroom. My experience of going in the woods was probably accomplished with greater facility than would be going on an airplane. Actually, the reasons for not taking an airplane were the same for not taking a train. Therefore, driving was the logical choice. It would take much longer, but I would be in more control. Still, I dreaded the demands such a trip would make on my patience and courage. The best thing to do was face it with an attitude befitting the new me. This was an adventure, and the new me wanted to expand my horizons, experience what life had to offer. Why then was I not taking a plane or train? Reality must be catered to, and the time would eventually come when I would be able to experience those things. Right away, I began to plot my strategy for such a long trip. Taking into consideration my usual method of traveling, I calculated it would take 3 days to get to Albany. That was if I didn't suffer any unforeseen vehicle problems. Vehicle problems were a major fear. What if the truck broke down and I had to walk? Afraid of being glared at and ridiculed by a freeway full of strange motorists would likely force me to become a permanent squatter wherever the truck gave up. A cellular phone was the solution. Of course, I was aware of the possibility of getting stranded in an area where the phone had no coverage, but at least it provided some peace of mind. Other than vehicle problems, which were unlikely, the greatest concern was making pit stops for the necessities such as food, fuel, and latrine. The goal was to keep moving, and when you did have to stop, do so in the most obscure, abandoned, out of the way, sparsely populated place you could find. Stopping for fuel was no longer so frightening. Used to be, one was forced to walk all the way into the convenience store before or after filling up with gas in order to pay. That was in the old days. Paying with a credit card at the gas pump was technology widespread and highly appreciated by countless hurried people in this fast-paced society, but no more appreciated than by those who are shy, lazy, and fat. One could exit the interstate, fill up with gas, and return to the interstate with cruise control set in about 5 minutes. No, stopping for fuel was not much of an impediment. The problem with food wasn't stopping for it, but not being able to eat any. The more you eat and drink, the more you have to stop to get rid of it. When traveling, I got up very early so my body had plenty of time to excrete any and all substances accumulated overnight. I drank no coffee and ate no breakfast. Once I was sure the body was properly cleansed, I hit the road. The next time I ate or drank anything of substance was after I stopped for the night. Until then, I got by on nibbling crackers and sipping water. It truly is amazing how long one can go without using the restroom. Sometimes, however, no matter how careful I was, the need for a latrine would suddenly hit early in the day. I would drive until I thought I could hold it no longer and then began looking for a place that met my requirements. Such a blessing rarely occurred, and I would continue driving and holding, often waiting until stopping for the night before achieving relief. With all of these struggles swirling through my mind, backing out of the trip was seriously contemplated almost every hour, but each time I would convince myself that I would always regret not being there for my friend. Too many times I let down family and friends, avoiding the great events of their lives. No longer would I let my feelings about my weight hold me hostage, dominating my decision and actions. I was going to that wedding. I may hate every second of it, but I was going. Thankfully, the trip to Albany was uneventful. There were no vehicle problems, nor did I soil my britches. I went directly to the hotel where Dustin had made my reservations. My room was on the 3rd floor, and the elevator was out of order. This was going to be a fun 3 days. Though I wasn't in the wedding, Dustin wanted me at the rehearsal and the dinner afterward. The occasion of the dinner was when I was faced with my greatest challenge of the trip. The restaurant was downtown, and the nightlife had started. Traffic was terrible, and the sidewalks were packed with people. We slowly drove past one of the high-rise buildings when Dustin pointed at it and said, "The restaurant is in there." Scanning the area, I noticed there was no place to park. I asked, "Where do people going to this building park?" He pointed down the street, saying, "There's a lot at the end of the block where we have to pay to park." Panic was growing inside me. I couldn't believe I was in this situation. In a couple of minutes, I was going to have to make a huge decision. Either muster the courage to walk a whole city block crowded with thousands of people, or stay in the car all evening disappointing my best friend. It would be foolish to come all this way and sit in the car, I decided. I was going to endure whatever happened. The stares, the snickers, or any cruel comments were not going to prevent me from having a good time. There were many in our group, and that brought some comfort. It was an uphill walk, and I led the way with a pretty good pace. Yes, I was fat, but I wasn't going to be the stereotypical fat guy bringing up the rear. Trying to seem untroubled, I conversed and smiled and laughed the whole way. No wonder fat people are accused of being jolly. When we arrived at the restaurant, we still had to climb a flight of stairs to our reserved room. My legs were only slightly fatigued and my breathing steady, almost normal. Everyone was mingling, seemingly unaware of my amazing accomplishment. Not just the bravery I displayed in getting out of the car in the first place, but the physical feat whose equivalent for a thin man was winning the New York Marathon. My diet and exercise were clearly paying off, and nobody knew. So I had to inform them. For 10 minutes, my mingling topic was me, and how only a few weeks ago I would have killed over, clutching my heart after such an exertion. We had a great time, and I was only slightly hesitant about the walk back to the car. Once again, I led the way, talking and laughing, and then sighing with tremendous relief as I entered the security of the vehicle. The wedding the next day was beautiful, and by the end of the reception, I was exhausted. I said my farewells to everyone, and Dustin gave me a big hug and said my being there meant a lot to him. All the suffering, which was really self-inflicted, became very small in my mind, and I was happy with the decision to come. I missed Du Bois and couldn't wait to get back. It was home, and my anxiety gradually fell away the closer I got. The first thing I did on my arrival was weigh. While on the trip, I made no special efforts to lose weight, and to my surprise, there was 12 pounds less of me than before I left. I attributed the loss to the broken elevator in the hotel. Climbing 3 flights of stairs was simple for me, and I enjoyed doing it every opportunity. The end of chapter 6. And now chapter 7. Chapter 7 is called The Aspirations, and this is what my dad drew for this chapter. And that sign says Scenic Overlook. Okay, chapter 7, the final chapter. The first good snow of the season came only a few weeks after I returned from the wedding. Late in the afternoon, I went to the Scenic Overlook, which was my favorite vantage point to enjoy the wondrous mountains. From there, I could see Ramshorn Peak and miles of the Absaroka mountain range. Nothing in the world was as pretty, especially when covered with snow. I stopped in a strategic location to view as much as possible from inside the truck. The Scenic Overlook was also a good place to think. Nobody ever accused me of thinking too deeply or too often, but I did have a lot to think about. The first 2 weeks after the wedding, I gained 15 pounds. Determining I needed some help in my battle of the bulge, I joined the local Weight Watchers group. Being the only man in the group at first bothered me, but that concern dissipated rapidly when I was treated simply as another one of the girls. Thankfully, my eating and exercising were back on track, and I was losing once again. For the first time, I recognized the potential for happiness that I hadn't experienced in years. God certainly had blessed me in many ways: a good family, good health in spite of my weight, good friends, no life tragedies, and above all, being a Christian. Yes, I was blessed, but not happy. True happiness, I believe, comes from doing my best to please God. As long as I allowed my obesity to keep me from reaching my fullest God-given potential, I would never truly be happy. I wasn't positive what I wanted to do once I lost all the extra weight, but I was positive that losing the weight was the first step. However, I could find great encouragement from thinking about all the different things I wanted to do once I lost the weight. So, what would I do when I lost the weight? I was thinking big. How about run in the New York City Marathon, hike the Appalachian Trail, ride a bicycle from coast to coast, learn how to sail? These weren't the kind of things that God would expect me to do, but things God would allow me to do if I worked hard enough. If I had the body to do those things, I would definitely have the body, the stamina, and the confidence to serve God in many important ways. The Bible passage, James 4:7, came to mind, and I said it out loud. Therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Escaping the temptations of Satan, even in these secluded mountains, was impossible, but rejecting them was not. The sun was getting lower in the sky, and the fabulous colors of the evening began to emerge. I got out of the truck in order not to miss a single inch of the vista. Standing there bundled against the cold, I wondered what I would say if there were a congregation of fat people before me at the moment. A number of cliches came to mind, But what is wrong with a good cliche when it tells the truth? We can do it. We can lose the weight no matter how fat we are and no matter how old we are. We must do it because there is too much at stake. Our very lives are at serious risk. I don't know about you, but this is my one shot at life on this earth, and I'm not going to help make it a short one. It's not just the health risks, but also being comfortable at the theaters, restaurants, and ball games, experiencing the relationships and creating the bonds that are unlikely to happen by closing out the world. Every single day is a blessing from God and an opportunity to improve. Make goals. Not just weight loss goals, but also goals concerning things you want to accomplish as you lose the weight and after you lose the weight. We may not get in good enough shape to hike the Appalachian Trail, but we can be fit and comfortable enough to play in the park with the kids and the dog. Be patient. We didn't put the weight on overnight, and we won't take it off overnight. One of the toughest challenges is to remain consistent. We're going to drift from our routine on occasion, but it is important not to waste time beating ourselves up when we do, but get right back on track. Be courageous. Not only must we push ourselves physically, but also emotionally. We don't want to get out and do things because we are embarrassed about how we look, but we aren't going to lose weight by hiding indoors. The more we get out and live life now, the more we will be inspired and desire more of the same in the future. See a doctor. Make an appointment with a doctor and be sure he or she understands you want assistance losing weight in a healthy way. A good, caring doctor will take the time to help with a program of proper diet and exercise. Don't wait. Quit putting it off. Since losing the weight is going to take time, get started now. Nobody is going to do it for us. Those are just a few things I would have said to a congregation of fat people. Then I wondered what I would say to a congregation of thin or healthy people. Encourage the obese people in your life. They may start 1,000 different diets and give up on every one, but don't give up on them. Be supportive every time they are excited and energized to lose weight, because that one time may be the beginning of the final remedy. Also, empathize with them. This doesn't mean feel sorry for them, but trying to understand the challenges they face. The better you understand them, the better you may assist in conquering them. About 500 yards away down the hill, I saw a black object running in the snow. It appeared to be a cow, but was moving too fast. Too small to be a moose. What do you know, it was a black bear. I was facing north and he was running to the west. He wasn't running fast, but with an easy lope. The truck was only a few feet away, so I didn't have to worry about my safety. What a beautiful sight. Soon this bear would be going into hibernation, but I was just waking from mine. Seeing the bear reminded me of an article in the local paper about the most recent bear incident. A group of elderly ladies were gathered in a home playing bridge. They heard a noise coming from the front porch and thought it was a bird. Suddenly, a starving black bear stood up in front of a large picture window, placing his paws on the glass. The ladies screamed and were afraid it would break the window and attack them. While the hostess called the sheriff, one of the ladies stood boldly in front of the window, raised her cane, and shook it at the bear. Talk about a beautiful sight. Lord willing, I will someday be an old man shaking my cane at bears. The bear I was watching ran out of sight. The cold was beginning to penetrate, so it was time to go home. I pulled on the handle of the truck door, but it didn't open. It took about 2 seconds to realize what had happened. There were my keys, still in the ignition. It took about 2 minutes to realize my only option was to walk back to town. DuBois was 3 miles from the scenic overlook. No problem. 6 months ago, 3 miles would have been a major ordeal and possibly life-threatening, but now it was not much more than a pleasant hike. There was a spring in my step as I headed for town, and 2 things had put it there. Number one, I was well on my way to accomplishing the new goals I made for my life. Number two, somewhere out there a bear was running around. The end. I hope you enjoyed it.